Hello everybody, today I'd like to just take a minute to talk a little bit about one element of Arcane AoE, and that is the interaction between Arcane Barrage and a trait called Arcane Pressure. Arcane Pressure gives us extra damage to the baseline of our Barrage skill based on the number of charges that we have. So if you have 4 charges, then you multiply the number that they give you by 4 and add that to the baseline. In this case, on this piece I have 4800, so close to 5000. On this piece 42, so around 9000 per charge, which is 36,000 damage. But this only occurs when the target's in execute range, and for our purposes that's 35% or lower HP. You can see the training dummies that I'm hitting right now. One of them I've been whacking for a while is within range of our execute, and so it's going to receive 36,000 extra damage just as a flat baseline improvement to when it hits this target. Obviously Resonance, which is a talent for Arcane that we use in AoE, is going to increase our damage of Barrage based on the number of targets that we hit with it. So in this case 40% extra damage for Barrage. All of this goes together, especially when we use cooldowns in like a Mythic Plus or a special portion of, say, a Nyalotha encounter where execute's really important. It basically ends up being a massive amount of damage. And I'm going to go and look at the damage charts. I've just been whacking these dummies for quite a while, so you can see in a second. But let me just show you when we put on some cooldowns here and get up to 4 and throw off, see if we can get a good crit. There's 195k. Sometimes we can get a little higher. I'll just check the chart in a minute because I've been going at this for quite a while. But all of these targets can get hit for just massive amounts of damage. And I want to encourage you just to think through planning out your AoE rotation around getting good executes with your barrages. So if we look here, having had this one dummy in execute range, this is not the other dummies in execute range, but just one dummy in execute range, you can see how far up barrages come in my damage. It's almost half of the damage that Arcane Explosion does, and I'm running 3 of my explosive echo traits. So the spender is gaining on the builder by quite a lot. If we had no executes in here, this number would go way down. You can see here about 145 casts of barrage. We've got our normal hits hitting upwards around 150k damage. That's one bolt of barrage hitting a target for 150,000 damage. That's in our execute range, and then when it crits, we've hit crits around 256. You can see on the right here, 256,000 damage. So that'll obviously be your main target. You get a 40% reduction for other targets, but those targets are also susceptible to the crit and the execute portion of barrage. So every target that's below 35% is going to get hit for massive amounts of damage. And this is partly what makes Arcane a really desirable piece to add, especially for Mythic Plus over Fire, because it can add just insane amounts of AoE damage on demand, and it provides a really powerful execute. So if mobs need to die at relatively similar times, the Arcane is really good for doing that. Sometimes in Frost or in Fire, there's a priority add that usually gets nuked down just due to the nature of how those 2 specs do their damage. So there's a lot of cleave with a Glacial Spike or a Frozen Orb, and Fire's Ignite is really not in the control of the Fire Mage. So if he does a huge burst and the Ignite comes out, maybe there's a discrepancy between which targets go down first. But Arcane offers fairly even AoE damage, and then the execute portion of Arcane Barrage makes it you get up there in insane ranges. So there's some value for this actually in encounters where there's going to be a lot of mobs dying over the course of it. So even some of the raid encounters in Nyalotha, where you have to kill a whole bunch of adds over and over again, there are some single target uses for Arcane Pressure. But on the whole, it's really just an outstanding AoE spell, especially for Mythic Plus, where you can get a group to pile together 20 or 30 mobs and then just go to town on them. So anyways, I just wanted to highlight that. This dummy has now reset, so I can't show you any more executes, but just think through a little bit how you might use Barrage. You have to remember there's a positional requirement to it, just to be careful of. That is to say, if you're facing away from the targets, your Barrage will not hit them. And I think, as I showed in another video, if you've targeted a mob that's not in the center of the pile, your barrage will only hit targets in a cone that proceeds with that as the center of the cone. So this one on the left, I'm standing and facing all of them, but my barrage only hits these two. If I target this one in the middle, all 3 bolts will hit these 3. So just beware of those things, and yeah, get out there and play some Arcane. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.